Are you ready for National Black Girl Month? April is National Black Girl Month, and this year we're centering Black motherhood. National Black Girl Month is a call to celebrate, invest, and champion Black women and girls. Join the movement and spread the spark. Visit nationalblackgirlmonth.com. Welcome to Impact Innovators with Felicia Ford, where we dive into the strategies that empower changemaker brands to leave a lasting legacy. Think of this podcast as your audio playbook for meaningful action. What's possible when thought leaders, disruptors, and pioneers align to share their journeys? I'm Felicia Ford, your host, bringing together the brightest minds and the most groundbreaking ideas to help you drive change, navigate through the sticky stuff, and elevate your brand. Whether you're tackling funding hurdles, looking for growth strategies, or seeking the perfect balance between profit and purpose, we've got you covered. Stay tuned and be a part of a movement that's setting new benchmarks in how we think about progress, community, and doing. Let's innovate, impact, and inspire. All right, friends, welcome back. And again, we have an incredible guest joining us today and my co-host for this month, Dr. Rikesha Fry Brown. So today we're talking about motherhood, and it is not just about biology, but it's about presence, it's about intention, it's about care. We celebrate the mothers who birth, but what about those who build and nurture? The women who step in and show up and create spaces of love and transformation for children and communities, whether or not they share the same DNA. For over a decade, Dr. Brooke Jones has been doing just that. As a mother, as a founder of Fresh Start for the Mind, she has reshaped mental health care in Georgia, expanding access to psychological evaluations, psychiatric care, counseling, and nutrition services. What started as a vision has grown into a powerhouse for holistic healing, impacting countless families. In this special National Black Girl Month episode, Dr. Rikesha Fry Brown and I are sitting down with Dr. Brooke Jones to explore the depth of motherhood beyond traditional definitions. What does it mean to mother a community? What does it mean to provide mental and emotional nourishment? And how do we honor the caregivers, mentors, and nurturers? Love knows no bounds. So today's conversation expands our understanding of motherhood, healing, and the power of showing up no matter how you arrived at that role. Dr. Brooke, welcome.
I am so excited to be here. I am so thankful for the topic, the motherhood beyond biology. Of course, adoption is very near and dear to my heart, but there are so many moms out there who don't get to tell their stories because it's not the traditional mother. So the aunties, the grandmothers, the foster, the adoptive, there was the next door neighbor who could get on me just as well as my grandma could. So,
Right.
that's for all the mamas and friends who show up for kids. I really do appreciate this topic. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. We're so excited to have you. Dr. Rakisha and I were talking earlier about what it means to be a daughter and what it means to nurture others and the spaces that we are nurtured in. But you mentioned from foster care to mentorship, so many women mother in ways that aren't always acknowledged. Why do you think society still holds such a narrow definition of motherhood?
That's a great question. When you think about mom, you think, okay, well, to be a mom, it has to happen this way, which is very true. It has to happen the biological way. But outside of that moment when children come into this world, some situations can happen where that isn't the case, where the biological mother can't be present or not as present as she should be for a lot of different life circumstances. So others step in, and whether that's a full time step in, as an actual mother, adoptive aunties, like I said before, or if it's just pairing alongside a mother who may just need a little extra support. That's motherhood
Mhm.
for me. So it's just when we can get outside of the context of the biology of how children happen, then
Mhm.
we'll see that moms are everywhere.
Yeah.
Before we jump into your story of motherhood and adoption, I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about how you've seen non traditional mothers and motherhood, stepmothers, grandmothers, mentors shape the mental and emotional well being of your clients and your patients through your work with Fresh Start for the Mind and all of the other dynamic work that you've done leading up to this point in your career.
Thank you. So I do a lot of intakes. Most of my job is doing the psychological evaluations. So when you're doing psych evaluations, you're usually assessing for a diagnosis, you're assessing to see learning strategies, potential ADHD, mental health disorders for lots of reasons. So oftentimes parents come in, of course, to have their child evaluated, and a good handful of those parents are other caregivers. We'll have to, of course, get consent to speak to the aunt, to speak to the grandmother, or an adoptive parent and foster parent to get services for their children. But they bring such passion and such desire for their kids to do better and be better, and having the awareness of what a psychological evaluation can do for the child. It's really rewarding to see. And of course, every time I was raised by my grandmother primarily, I was raised by a lot of people, but my grandmother right there in the household. So every time I get a grandmother who comes in for an evaluation and hear her talk about her babies, my heart just glows extra. But I get that a lot. We have 3 locations across metro Atlanta area. So we get a lot of different diverse families that come in, all kinds of ways, shape, sizes, positions, how they got to become moms or fathers too. So yeah, it's been a lot.
Absolutely. I think there's something to be said for motherhood of the heart. We talk about biology, but once you've taken a child in and then taken on the role and responsibility of securing any type of services for that child, that's a work of heart. I think that when you sit down with a parent, biological or other, and can feel that passion and that love, there's so much to be said for that. That again, that narrow view of motherhood inside the lines of biology completely obliterates and misses.
Mhm.
And so I think it's important and so valuable that we have these kinds of conversations.
I agree. And I also think too that moms, they do the best that they can. And sometimes the can is very, very low because they have their own history. I can go a whole direction with that. So if doing the best I can is just bare minimum compared to a mom who does have the resources, the knowledge, we all connected. Our hearts are connected to our kids. And again, if an auntie comes in and takes over, sitting with that kid, hugging that kid, putting the kid to bed at night, taking care of boo-boos and colds, you do build a connection, and that love grows and love grows. So you want what's best for them. And it's nothing that takes away from parents who don't have that knowledge or resources. But again, we do the best we can. It's just recognizing that for all the can is different.
Absolutely, because sometimes the best that we can do is to step away, to
Absolutely.
not provide hurt, to not
Absolutely.
impose,
Yeah.
pain or whatever chaos may be in us as we're healing ourselves or growing through whatever it is that we're going through. And so, yeah, that can is different. I love that statement.
Mhm. And that's
Yeah,
love too. That's love. Stepping
absolutely.
away can be love. You're right.
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
I love how this is demonstrating sometimes the best thing you can do is to not hurt your
Mhm.
child and allow those who can come in and just wrap their arms around and provide that support. I'm remembering working in foster care and what it was to be in foster care. I had no clue. My very first client was a 6-week-old child,
Goodness.
and she went home with her then foster parents at 2 weeks. And so I was responsible for transporting her from her foster parents to have supervised visitation with her biological parents. And that just changed my entire life as someone who had no idea that this is how other people lived. But it showed me another world, and I am going to champion adoptive parents all day, every day, because I've seen from an still an outside perspective, but I had a little bit of insight on all of the emotions, all of the life change, everything that you go through with bringing this little person or these even teenagers into your lives to become a part of your family. And so I'm just acknowledging all that you've experienced, and I don't know yet, but Dr. Brooke, as a Black mother, were there unique challenges that you or perspectives you encountered in your process?
Yes, as I'm listening to you talk, I even thought about something that one of the facilitators for our adoptive classes we had when we before we adopted our son, and I'll tell our story in just a bit. She said that she's met with biological moms and she's met with adoptive moms, and when they tell their story, their journeys are just beautiful, and I don't know what that biological mom journey is like, but when I hear moms talk about it, and I've had friends, of course, who have biological kids, and Dr. Rikesha, same thing, is that you have these beautiful moments in this story, and your journey is so beautiful that I can't understand, but I appreciate it. And I see the joy
Mhm.
in your eyes when you talk about it. And you'll see when I talk about my story, I love my story. And it's a journey that some biological moms may not know. So, yes,
Mhm.
when she said that, it really did take away. I won't say that I had much stigma because I was raised by my grandmother. Again, I had a lot of different moms in my life. I always wanted to adopt. I just didn't, I wanted biological children as well. So I
Mhm.
think that just hearing from other mothers that were adopting, foster moms, it took away the stigma, the fear of, well, what happens if it's not mine, and the risk factors if they turn out this way and don't have. It's just beneficial, I guess, when you can hear other people's story. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think that you wish people understood in the Black community about adopting? Because again, I didn't even know what foster care was.
Mhm.
I was 22, 23 years old. I didn't understand it. I didn't know. But what do you think that, or what do you wish that people knew?
Well, first of all, I want to say that there's a lot of people in the Black community that are raising children anyway. They just didn't go the legal route to make it official.
Mhm.
There's a lot of adoptive parents out there that just raising my sister's kids or raising my grandchildren in the Black community. But when you step outside of family, and again, adoption can happen within a family, but when you step outside of the biological family, there are so many children out there who need a home. So many different. And I know this sounds really crazy, but when we were going through the process of adopting, we filled out so much paperwork that some of the paperwork was like, what type of child do you want? What age do you want? What color? What race? What do you not want him to have or her to have? And it's like it felt like you're filling out a dating application or something. It's like I don't want to be too tall and this. I don't want this diagnosis. I don't want that diagnosis. He can't speak delays. It's just they walk you through the process so well. And if there are fears as far as getting a child who has autism or getting a child who has medical delays, you really can talk through and figure out all the options for adopting, all the options for fostering, and what suits your life. I do wish people knew that there are so many different options out there, and there's so many children who need homes. I think education around adopting and fostering would be really, really crucial for the Black community.
Before we go any further, I do want you to share with us your journey to
Okay.
this space, not just as an expert in working with individuals and families and in the community, but as a mom, how you got to this place.
Yay. So it is a very unique story. I think I'm unique. So, of course, I would have one, right? But before I go into the story, I do want to honor my kid's father. He was on the journey with me as well. He and I talked about today's podcast, and he's very supportive of me telling our story for adoption and just acknowledge him. And, he's a great father and the journey that men have too. So,
Mm.
but we have two children, a 12-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter now. And it's because of my son's adoption story that we were sought out for adopting our daughter. But my son's story, it involves really listening, seeking God's path. And it was such an easier and more obvious path than what we were trying to do. We had 5 years of infertility, no success, never any invasive treatments, but lots of medication, cycle charting, tons of pregnancy tests, lots of doctor visits, a lot of disappointments. So we even had insurance issues. Traffic was always crazy. I mean, you name it, it was like hell to get there. But driving all the way to Emory, arguing all the way to Emory, once showing up for an appointment that didn't even have, it wasn't even scheduled. It was just a mess.
Oh.
I know. But again, I've always had a heart for adoption. Like I said, I was raised by a lot of moms, and my grandmother was crucial in my life. And I call her mom. So if I reference mom, I'm mentioning my grandmother. And then my then husband, he knew that adoption was going to be part of my journey. But we both had in our mind that that would probably be our last child, not the first. So we were growing in our faith at the time, and we had been praying and fasting on the Jeremiah 29:11 verse that's become our life verse. So we had it posted on our refrigerator, on our phones, even have matching tattoos of the verse. So it truly became our life verse. And we eventually stopped with the appointments. I was done with the medications, and we both decided let's just let our bodies naturally heal if it's meant to be. And we opened our eyes to adopting and decided to just attend some classes, get some information. And when I tell you that road, smooth sailing, no traffic, bright and sunny days, all the things. We met the most wonderful people in the classes. We were getting excited about the process. And about a year or so in the process, like I said, we were doing tons of paperwork. We were finally approved in May of 2015. So again, these times are crucial in my story. But around that time, my mom, my grandmother, she had given me a Mother's Day card, and I brought props because I was like knew I was going to tell my story. So she gave me this Mother's Day card, guys, the May of 2015, before we were ever adopted. And in the card it says, "This blessing is for yours to come. Love you always and forever, Mom." So I have it framed. It's in on my mommy wall. So she gave me that in May, and then unfortunately, a month later, she passed away. And it was
Mm,
very sudden. It wasn't anything that we had prepared for. But on June 14th of 2015, that's just 2 weeks after we were approved for being an adoptive parents, she left us. And it was really devastating time, really hard time, but we were still very hopeful for the adoption process. At our last home visit in May, we were told it'll probably take about 6 or more months to match. So just be patient. Well, a month later, 2 weeks after she passed, we get a call, and the call was from the adoption agency, and they read through the criteria. We have a 2 year old African American boy. Again, we checked the list. That's what we wanted as far as details. And he meets the criteria for what you're looking for. And guess what his name is? Jeremiah. It was like, wait, what? so, so we had, that was 11 o'clock at night. I can't even remember that. It was a Tuesday night. And Wednesday, which is usually a really busy day for me, I had a cleared schedule. So we were able to go to the adoption aid. And that's not usual for me.
mm,
I'm constantly busy. My friends and family will tell you. But for some reason, God, I had this Wednesday free. So the very next day, we go to the adoption agency. Another shocker that I had the time off, and just lots of factors. Even my career came into play, looking at all of his assessment results, evaluations, psychologists that I had interacted with, had met with him already. Again, I can go on and on about just all the ways that this seemed to be aligning with what was for us. So he even looked like, when we finally met him, he even looked like my then husband, his dad.
Mhm.
So we had really, well, let's see, we met him 2 weeks later, had our first home visit. He spent the night, crazy about his room, super high energy. We connected well. And after that, I think 2 more weeks later, he was in our home forever. So a month
mm,
after me getting that email, he was in our forever home. So that's how he came to be. And it was challenging. I mean, he had some speech delays in the beginning, some behavioral issue, partial blindness that we discovered in one of his eyes. So lots of therapies, lots of doctor's appointments, and over the years, interventions. But again, a very fun, amazing child. Like I said, he's 12 now, and he's just, I can go on and on about him. But we fast forward from meeting our son 2 years later. A friend reached out about the possibility of adopting a newborn baby girl because they knew of our story of adopting. Now, this is the one time where I am thankful that adoption's not prevalent in the black community, because they like, oh, the potential adoption. Let's reach out to Brooke. So they did. They reached out, and we were able to meet the biological mom. And we were so thankful for her selflessness. And like you said, stepping away was a situation. And it just felt like God's alignment, and for her trusting us. We were really thankful. But we were both there for our daughter's birth. I got to hold the biological mom's hand and encourage her. My then husband, he got to cut the umbilical cord. We stayed overnight with our
mm,
baby girl. I was pushed out the hospital in a wheelchair, like I did something, but I had the whole nine. It was just super special. And like I said, I can go into more detail if you have questions about the process, but it just was aligning. And our children now, they're happy, healthy, active, and good hearted. I know they know their adoption. So every year we'll celebrate their birthday, and they celebrate their gotcha day. So gotcha
wow,
day is their legal adoption day, and it's just part of our family story. It has no bearing on us being a family,
mhm,
our babies. So, again, I don't know what the biological mother process feels like, but I can say with pretty much certainty that I feel the same way. My heart is just as big. The connection is just as strong. And they're my kids. So that's how
mm.
we got here. Now they're big and all over the place and amazing and all the things. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Such a beautiful experience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love to tell my story. And again, it's just, I don't feel like it's my story. I feel like there was a big, big God part in it. And there was
Mhm.
like, I if you knew my mom, she was a no nonsense kind of. So I have it in my head that she was, the heaven is like, all right, God, this is what we're doing. And
Right.
then all the things just align. But a lot of support from family and friends. And again, the knowledge going to those adoption classes. And you don't have to go saying, this is what I'm going to do. You're just going to get information and how it could fit into your life. So that helped the most with understanding which program to enter and the type of adoption that we wanted.
So this is a weird question, I guess, because you can't compare it until you say it, I guess. So I don't know if I like this question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway.
Okay.
About the emotional labor
Mhm.
of motherhood as a Black adoptive mother.
Mhm. Um,
That's a hard
so
question.
you mentioned, yeah, I'm trying to think. Uh, I think I have two answers to the question because I can interpret it two ways.
Okay.
So first, when I think about the emotional labor for adoptive moms in the beginning, it's probably very different. We had a month to prepare for our son to come into our home. And again, we had been in the process for a year. So his room was painted, his bed was there. We kept looking, we were hopeful, we were excited. So there was a lot of anticipation. And I don't know if I can akin it to a pregnant mom as her belly's growing and feeling like getting excited to see the ultrasound, but we were anticipating. We were having stories with each other about what he's going to look like jumping in the bed and they're going to go to bed. That anticipation and just looking at his room complete. But again, some adoptive or foster parents may not have that depending on time. With our daughter, we had a month. And it's like, whoa, a newborn baby. Wait, what? So first we do have time to think about and pray about it. And make a decision right now. And
Right.
bottles and diapers and formula and how the bottle has to be. And we didn't go to class. We we don't know all of this stuff. There was probably a little bit more fear and just jumping into action and just trying to get things taken care of quickly that
Mhm.
you don't get that same emotional process. Again, you have timing, that's a big factor, the type of adoption, that's a big factor. People who adopt across countries, then there's another emotion that's probably tied to that. So I think everybody has a different story, biological moms as well. And the other way that I interpret the question is being a Black mom just to Black kids, period, no matter how
Right.
you get them.
Mhm.
And a lot of fear, especially for my son. He's 12 now and he knows everything and he's trying to be cool and trying to find his cool. So just being a Black mom of a boy that's got brown skin and stage now where he is not thinking that mom knows all she's talking about. So the fear
Right.
the fear that comes with that is, and again, I won't say that other races don't have the same fear, but we can absolutely acknowledge that this is a time of in society where we do have a little bit more going on in the Black community where as we're raising our children. And with the Black daughter, I didn't even want girls, y'all. I didn't want girls. I mean, I thought of myself as a boy mom. I love all the boy things and football and not the girly stuff, but golly, I have a girly girl. Girly girl. So yeah, having to tap into that to connect with her that's been fun. But I will
Mhm.
say that just being a Black mom, there does come a lot of fear that perhaps some other races don't have to think about. Like for example, today, as my son is coming out of his class. I went to pick him up early so I can be ready for this podcast. And he comes out with his hood on. The first thing I said, take your hood down. So like little things like that, you don't think that,
Mhm.
like, I'm saying it for a particular reason. And we go to
Mhm.
certain places, I'm saying it for a particular reason. But, maybe that's not something that other parents have to think about for their kids.
Absolutely. And that perfectly aligns to where I'm getting ready to ask you to bridge
Mhm.
your professional and your motherhood role. When we think about Black motherhood, particularly in this day and age, we're often expected or we are experiencing an invisible load.
Mhm.
That fear, the burden of protection, and all of the things that we do as we're nurturing, leading, and healing our communities and our own children. Can you talk about how we honor the work of mothers that are carrying that load while we also try to protect them from burnout?
Mm.
Yeah. Oh man, that is probably a question that I could ask you, like, help me.
Perfect.
Because it is a lot. And I'm thankful. I don't want to make this sound like I'm complaining at all. I'm very thankful for every role that I have in my life, but the burnout part, there's often times where I have to remind myself, rest. You can't even deal with this question from your staff. You can't because I can't rest with them. It's not.
Right.
So, yeah, it gets heavy sometimes, and we can't always talk about our fears. We can't say certain things because we're going to be seen as angry. We can't express certain things because then we're bringing race into it's like, but gosh, it's heavy. It's very
Mhm.
heavy. So, bridging the gap, I would say, as I love me some music. So, we are very musical. We sing a lot, we dance a lot. I think that for us in my home, music is a release. So if they've had a hard day, long day, we'll just blast it and keep going. My son plays drums. We'll listen to him, just rock out. And even like at nighttime, like I sing to my kids, I soothe them. My daughter comes in, she's had a nightmare or something. That's the go-to is I'll sing you a spiritual song. I'll pray over you to get you back. But music is a balance for us. And I would also say that time away, so vacationing and just breathing. It doesn't have to be far, but just hey, we're gonna go to down an hour away just to kind of get away from the everyday life. But it's hard. So, maybe I can do better, I'm sure, but even the fact that I can say that I can do better makes me exhausted. Like, God, I can do
Right.
better. Why do I have to? Uh,
Right.
yeah, it's a lot.
I'm listening, and as you're sharing your story, I'm also envisioning, but I'm thinking about you also as the professional and the responsibility that you have. You hinted a little bit about speaking to your team. And so there's that boundary there of how deep you can go in showing your own vulnerability. And then I think about the Black community and our sometimes resistance to acknowledging those things that weigh us down and the things that hurt and mental health as a topic. What do you think, how do we shift this conversation around mental wellness in the perspective of being a mother especially, but just in general in our community?
I think it just has to be normalized. If we could normalize all that's affecting all of us. It's not a direct attack on you as a mom or me as a mom. It's just an impact of the homes that we were raised in, the communities that we were raised in, the city, the state, the country. It's the fact that my grandmother raised me versus my biological mom or the aunties that came in. I was like, this is just my story. It's nothing about
Mhm,
motherhood per se or black per se or but
mhm.
can we normalize that because I'm a mom, there's these things that I have to deal with because I'm black, there's these things that I have to deal with because when it's not a threat, it's not meant to be hurtful or dismissive of you have a
Right.
story too, and perhaps my story, regardless of what it involves, the race part, the I grew up in Kentucky, the small town, like so many amazing things because of that, and then so many not
Right,
so amazing things because of that, but that's just what it is. Can we talk about?
right.
And a mom who maybe doesn't look like me, but has a similar background in the same city, we can connect there.
Mhm.
Like, and I may not be able to connect with a black mom for it. Just we all have stories. We all have these puzzle pieces that make us. And if we could just normalize those puzzle pieces, perhaps we would have more support across races of moms because we need it. So it's like
Mhm,
ways
mhm.
that parent that other mothers know, and it's like, and I could just have your support because I also have this extra part to bring to motherhood that maybe you don't, and maybe you have a part that you bring, but just normalize it.
Right, right. Do you think that we give ourselves permission to slow down and acknowledge that?
Not moms for sure, because it's very heavy to think about. It's heavy to say, all right, I'm gonna take a break from mommy. And they're going through their own. If my son could tell his story, there's puzzle pieces that he has going on too. And because
Mhm.
he's still young and the mental capacity is limited, the life experiences are limited, then there's parts of his burden that I have to take on. And that's a non-negotiable. I will.
Right,
Um,
right,
so when in mothering, no. In life, maybe sometimes, but again, we have to tuck so much in that it really does depend on the capacity. So that's another. Again, I'm so 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 thankful. My heart is just beaming talking about this stuff because no one else is asking.
right,
No one has asked.
right,
Yeah.
right. What can we do? I mean, Dr. Keisha and I shared on our opening episode of why we're doing this and how we're doing this and what we're expecting and hoping to equip others with. But what can we do differently as a community, even if it hasn't happened and no one has asked yet? What can we do in our space?
I'm going to say something and hopefully answer your question, but I want to go back to my career as a psychologist. So, as I mentioned, I do evaluations, and psych evaluations, they involve so many parts. So, when I'm meeting with a patient and I ask, tell me about your home life, I do have to understand how you grew up. I also have to understand what type of environment you went to school in to understand if there was any learning issues because of going to this school versus that school. Tell me about your culture. What kind of things did you all do spiritually or traditions? Are you from this country versus that country? What was that like? And then also asking the questions about mental health and the severity of their symptoms and how their job is and how they met their partner and like all these ways that you learn a person. And that's what the first session of an evaluation is you're gathering so many pieces. And even though we have not even done an evaluation, by the end of that appointment, people are really thankful that they were able to talk about that part and that part and that part. And because I'm from England, oh, well, the school systems are this and versus here. And now I have to move here, or because women grew up like this, and now I have to be exposed to women here in this country. That is so important. Culture is so
Mhm.
important. So just asking those questions and letting people have a space just for that 1 hour to talk about all these different ways that they are puzzle pieces, because we all are
Yeah.
puzzle pieces, it really does help. And then you go on to the evaluation, learn more, and you gather more puzzle pieces. And then at the end, you present this beautiful puzzle. This is how you got here. And it could be because of what happened in the home. It could have been what happened in the dichotomy of culture. Could tons of reasons. Again, I can go on. I can talk about this stuff forever. But so when you ask the question, what can we do? It is more of what you're doing right now. It's asking the questions of the people who have so many dynamic puzzle pieces and they've at least somewhat figured out life and figured out how to do this thing because we don't have a roadmap to parenting. We don't have a roadmap to career. I didn't know I was going to be a psychologist and own my own practice until it happened. But asking the questions and giving people the space to tell their story and not trying to change their story. So
Mhm.
that's how you grew up. That's your truth. Okay, tell me what you want to tell me about that.
Mhm.
And then you listen, and it just makes people make sense to me. The good and the bad, I wish didn't make sense to me, but it makes sense because you give them a space to share who they are.
Mm.
I think what I hear, that stands out the most for me is that, we've heard the adage that we are the sum of our parts, but we put so much weight on the sum and not paid enough attention to the parts. And when we give space and light to the parts, then we can start to understand the sum a lot better. That there are pieces, and there are pieces that are shattered, they're broken, they're hurt, they're torn, they're whatever. And then there are also pieces of those same sums that are beautiful and joyful and have not been tarnished or damaged in any way. And we always are just looking at the sum, right?
Right.
And the sum
Right.
is either good or bad instead of looking at all of those pieces. And so I think that's really important about what you're saying, that even in our motherhood journeys are different, but they've paralleled because we do have a similar sum, right? Our work
Right.
our our sons are close in age, we've been in this together for a while, and yet the parts that make us so different and then make us so much alike are so important and beautiful. I think that that's a huge thing. I don't know that I've ever thought about it quite that way with that verbiage, but I love it, and I think it's gonna be impactful for people to hear.
Wow,
Mm.
you. I'm so glad too to hear it that way. Because imagine if you have all these puzzle pieces, but then someone says, "Well, take these four out."
Mm.
That's me. That's who I am.
Right.
And
Right.
I've got to take these four pieces out because the puzzle doesn't make sense to you. But this
Right.
is my puzzle. So again, in those, and again, I do intertwine my professional and personal a lot, but in those intakes, understanding a person is just so critical. We can say you're depressed, you're anxious, you're bipolar, you're da 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 da. But how do we even get here? Because of course there's a psychological part or a biological vulnerability, but what about all the other puzzle pieces that, because your depression is very different than my depression and her depression, his depression. So how do we get here? You know,
And how do we get out if we don't understand the roadmap to getting there? So absolutely.
or how do we get
Mm.
out if I've got only half my puzzle that's even able to have a conversation or that's
Yeah.
even cared about?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
This is so good.
I
It
know.
is.
Oh, I love it so much, y'all. I mean, and yeah, again, I'm so thankful that you said, "Hey, let's talk about adoption." But I mean, I can't talk about that journey again without referencing all the puzzle pieces because
All
that's
your parts,
yeah,
yeah.
it's my hearts. It's who I
Yeah.
am. Mhm.
Oh,
And
we
I
might have
feel
to do something with that, Rikesha, talking
absolutely.
about the parts and
Yeah.
crediting Dr. Brooke to talk about the parts.
Yeah, I'll patent the puzzle pieces before.
Give me a line. Give me a
Woo.
line.
To my line. Yeah, but yeah, so yes, that's what we can do is again putting these types of podcasts out there and just making it okay to have the conversations, ask the questions, and understand that it's not out of a space of anything bad. It's all good. The more we understand each other,
Mhm.
period.
The more we understand ourselves.
Yes, yeah,
Period.
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
And
This
I want to just add one last thing to that. It's also accepting that yourself because there's a lot of people who just don't accept those parts of themselves at all. Um,
mhm,
and that can present an empty puzzle. And then again, what does that present to the world? In all areas, motherhood, there's moms out there who struggle in
Mhm.
different ways mentally. So accepting yourself, and maybe that means, like Dr. Rikisha says, go to therapy. Maybe it means get a psyche eval, or maybe it means go and forgive or have a conversation with someone who is a little bit more advanced in their faith. Whatever it means for you, like accepting yourself so that you can then have the space to accept others and hear others and be supportive to others is really my hope for the world that I want my kids to grow up in.
mm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that's super powerful that you leave us with that because when we did the introductory conversation and talked about how we as women, as Black women, as Black girls, we exist in a world that often is blaming us and shunning us and treating us negatively because of our pure existence of who we
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
before they've gotten a chance to look past the skin or the hair texture or the clothes. It's already defining you before you sometimes before they know who they are, right? The Black girls in schools, and then Black mothers who may have had similar journeys and who don't know how to advocate for their child in that space, and then also who don't know how to advocate for themselves in a workplace or in a community or in a relationship. So I love that you inserted that in this conversation about identity and self-awareness. So thank you. Before we leave, if there's one piece of advice that you'd like to give women who are mothering, what would that be? And then how can our listeners connect with you outside of this space?
Mm. Um, my advice to mothers, gosh, we're so amazing. Gosh, I swear, I have heard so many stories personally and professionally. And, the heart of a mom, I'm not taking away from dads at all, but the heart of a mom in any capacity, the aunties, the next door neighbors, the church ladies, the grandmothers, the adoptive parents, like the heart of a mother is so beautiful. You're so beautiful. And if there's places where you're not seeing your beauty and your dynamicness, then figure out what needs to get out of that way. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm very visual, as you can tell. So I like to think that God gives us all these different ingredients, and then He makes us and He puts us into the world and gives us a purpose. And when we can figure out those ingredients, accept those ingredients, be aligned with the purpose, you're just it's magical. Like it's a beautiful place to live, and you're in alignment. So if you haven't, then what part of my journey do I need to take to get there?
Mm,
Because when
mhm.
I do, honey, women who run the world, come on, girls. So that's what I would say. And it does. It affects us as in every area, but for the point of today's conversation, especially mothers and mothering And if we're raising those ones that are downstairs and these others, who better to have it together?
Mm.
I say that with the caveat that we could use some the support from the people in our community, to people around us, dads, uncles. Again, I'm not taking away from them, but my goodness, mothers are dynamic.
Amazing.
And how can they reach you?
So my company is Fresh Start for the Mind, and we have locations in Stockbridge, Canton, and Swanee. The website is freshstartmind.com, and that's where you can find me, all of my amazing providers, my amazing team, who I just could go on and on about as well. And yeah, we do psych testing, we have psychiatrists on staff, counseling, coaching, nutritionist, dietitian. And yeah, we offer a lot of diverse services depending on the needs.
Amazing. Thank you again, Dr. Brooke Jones, Dr. Rikesha Brown. This has been an incredible conversation. We have more to come. Stay tuned.
Thanks, ladies.
The best leaders know that strategy happens in real time, in the right room, with the right people. That's why I created Momentum Lab, where creatives and changemakers meet weekly to break down challenges, refine their strategies, and move forward with momentum. If you're ready to sharpen your next move, join us at lab.feliciafordandco.com.
Hey, Changemaker, real quick before you go, if today's episode helped you in some way, the best way to thank me is to head over to Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the channel, and leave a review. I'd also love to connect with you over on social. You can find me at Friends Call Me Fee. Until next time, keep changing the game.